Assalamu alaikum. Welcome again to another episode of Islamic Learning with Masjid As-Sabur. I'm your host, Ahmad Hassan Ibn Julius Thibodeau. Today we're going to be visiting the Holy Quran, Surah 4, Ayat 135, and our topic today will be standing out firmly for justice. So we're going to open up with Al-Fatiha as we normally do. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. Maliki yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdinas siratal mustaqim. Siratal ladina an'amta alayhim. Ghayril maghdubi alayhim waladdallin. Ameen. And the English translation reads, I seek refuge in Allah from the rejected Satan. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, most merciful. All praise is due to Allah, the most gracious, most merciful, master of the day of judgment. You alone we worship and you alone we ask for help. Guide us along the straight path, the path of those whom you have favored, not those who earn your anger, nor those who go astray. Ameen. Moving ahead, we're going to, as I stated earlier, we're going to read from Surah 4, Al-Nisa, the women, and we're in Ayat 135. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu kunu qawwamina bil qist. Shuhada lillahi wala ala anfusikum awil walidaini wal aqrabain in yakun ghaniyan aw faqaran fallahu awla bihima fala tatabi'ul lahawa an taqtilu wa in ta'alul. Sadaqallahul Azim. Surely Allah speaks the truth. And the English translation reads, O ye who believe, stand out firmly for justice as witnesses to Allah, even as against your own selves, or your parents, or your kin, and whether it be against rich or poor, for Allah can best protect both. And in the tafsir, Yusuf Ali has written here that justice is Allah's attribute, and to stand firm for justice is to be a witness to Allah, even if it is detrimental to our own interests as we conceive them, or the interests of those who are near and dear to us. So, brothers and sisters, what is this actually saying? When I read this, I think about how difficult it is for us to simply join together as good people. We have race, we have wealth, we have class, we have all these different things separating us. And we join together for all the wrong reasons. It says somewhere in the Quran, I don't know the actual ayat off the top of my head, but it talks about how we make prayer for the wrong things. We pray for evil things. And you ask for ill wishes on, I wish bad on a person, or you're wasting your prayers on material things. And we have all these different things that separate us when we should really be praying that we can stand together, as this ayat instructs us to, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala instructs us to stand for good. And when I say that, I'm talking about simple things like the division amongst those of us who are being oppressed. And we turn around and we oppress one another because he's Mexican, he's Chinese, he's Vietnamese. And it's almost amazing to me how we can't come together based on standing for what is right, even though throughout the history of time, we've saw the effects and how powerful we can be when you're simply standing for what's right. And here it is where Allah, where you have in the Holy Quran and you get instructions from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to stand firmly for justice, even if it's against our own selves, against our parents, against our next of kin, and those whom we hold near and dear to our hearts. So what is this saying to us? This means that this is so powerful that if your own mother is doing something wrong and against someone and oppressing someone, and we've been in these situations many a times where your parent may be unjustly punishing your brother or your sibling, your sister, and we hold silent and we don't say anything. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us to stand firm. And so I guess the lines get kind of blurry because we're also instructed in most religions instruct us to honor thy parents and not even say as much as fee to your parents. But this is something different. It's not in a disrespectful way that you have to stand up and make this stand for what is right. Because to sit there silently, that's almost a crime. One of the prophets, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, one of the hadiths, the sayings of the prophet is, when a companion asked him, how do we respond to oppression? What do we do to the oppressor, especially if it's one of ours doing the oppression? And he's given us three options. One, the first option is to correct the oppression with your very hands, to stop oppression with your very hands. The second option is to speak out against it. And then the very last option is the weakest option, is if you can't do anything or you can't say anything, at the very least, hate that. Hate the oppression in your heart. Hate the act, not hate the person, but hate the actual act of oppression. Hate that in your heart. And if that's the weakest form that you can, the weakest response that you can offer, then at least you have to do that. But what we don't want to do is condone bad behavior based on all these different things that I noted out earlier, whether it's race, whether this person is rich and you want something from this person. And we know that happens all the time, whether it's political position, political power. You don't want to do the wrong thing based on these things. And the reason why is because what happens is it's a terrible example that we're putting forth. And what happens is the injustice that we see being promoted on a daily basis, it just runs rampant. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us evil isn't meant to run rampant. But what we do is we turn a blind eye and we don't say anything. I'll say this for myself. One of the most pivotal moments in my life, and I'll never forget. I was, as many of you know, I've served time. I served 23 years in prison. I was a lifer. And right before I was getting ready to go to the board of prison terms, a correctional officer, he and I had gotten to a war of words. And he lied and said that I threatened him. It was about 8 o'clock in the morning. If you haven't been inside, it's at that period of time on a weekday, it can be very quiet inside of an institution, inside of a building, a pod. I was dorm living at the time on level 2 in Solano. And so this guy writes me up, says that I threatened him, called him out, threatened to do physical harm to him. And so I had to take this write-up to the board. Mind you, I had just been granted a new hearing. And so the chief officer, he is actually present that day, and he was furious because he felt like I had embarrassed him. And so I'm trying to explain, but I know the situation. It's my word against his, which is pretty much a done deal. They're going to take his word over mine. And so the commissioner, the chief commissioner at the time, he just ripped into me and told me how I embarrassed him and how he put his neck out for me. And I told him that I would be back and I would prove that I hadn't said these things and I hadn't done anything to embarrass him. And it was just going to take time. And he was looking at me like, yeah, right. So I went back to the guy's partner, the other correctional officer who was on duty that morning. And I asked him, and both of these guys are white. And I asked him if he heard me be disrespectful in the encounter. First, I asked him, did he hear the exchange between myself and the officer? And he said that he did. And I said, at any point in time, did you hear me threaten him or be disrespectful? And he said, no, I didn't. I said, could you put that in writing for me? And he was like, wow. Because this is a big thing. I'm asking him to go against his partner, but I'm also asking him to tell the truth and to stand up for what is right, not based on this code of this green wall and correctional officers sticking together, whether they're right or wrong, but I'm asking him to stand up for what is right. So he told me to, give him a couple of days and come back and talk about it. Asked me to, use the appeal system and see how that turns out first. So I did all those things. Long story short, went through the appeal process. Every hearing officer, lieutenant, sergeant dismissed it with prejudice in favor of the officer who alleged that I had threatened him. And it was looking pretty dim for me. I made dua, prayed that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would soften this man's heart and move his heart and give him the courage and the compassion to do the right thing. So one day he came to me and he asked me, how was that turning out for me? I said, it's not looking good. I went through the appeal process. I'm pretty much on my last leg. And he said, you know what? Write up what it is that you said that happened. And if it's accurate, I'll sign it. And I was like, Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. I'll never forget that day. I wouldn't be sitting here. I don't know what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would have did to liberate me from those circumstances. But definitely he used him in a marvelous, magnificent way to help me prove my innocence. And so he signed it, went all the way back through the appeal process, and it was dismissed. Quickly, immediately filed the appeal to the California Board of Prison Terms, was granted a new hearing, and from there I was found suitable for parole. So whenever someone is talking about all white people are bad, and my thing is this, I knew the system was bad. And so I understand that how white people have a tendency to just be victim of their own system. Not excusing a person's behavior, whether we're talking about a correctional officer, a police officer, a politician, in many cases, all the way down to the lowest common denominator when we're talking about just a simple gang member. When you stand by, and not only when you don't exercise these three options that Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam has given us, and you don't stop it with your own hands, you don't speak out against it, and you don't hate it within your heart, you don't hate this action, but you condone it, you're really playing a role in this. You're really contributing to the oppression or the wrongdoing that's being executed, that's just happening, that's taking place. And my thing is that when you do that, you're a part of the injustice. You're a part of the injustice almost to the point where I don't see how you don't share in that sin because you're not doing anything about it and you're condoning it. We're talking about when you can just watch a person be abusive and you can just give a fake laugh and say something like, oh man, you're crazy. It's like, yeah, you're really crazy, but you're crazy for condoning it. You're just as wrong as that person. So rewinding back, I went to the board, was found suitable, came back, and he couldn't believe the gratitude that I expressed. And more gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it was so moving for me that I knew he didn't want to do that. I knew the position he was in, but I also knew that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can move a person's heart, can soften a person's heart to where they can do the right thing. And in many instances, that's what we need to do. This is something that is plaguing our community. When you have masjids that are all Pakistani, that are all Somalian, that are all Egyptian, whatever the case, all African Americans, it's like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us not to divide our religion up. Okay, so as long as we believe, I already know what the arguments would be, especially from scholars who are much more knowledgeable than I am. But let's just look at common sense. It's like, as a Muslim, if I enter a masjid, a place of worship, where we're all of us who say La ilaha illallah, Muhammadur Rasulullah, should I ever be made to feel uncomfortable? Like any Muslim entering the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, should you feel uncomfortable? Should you receive stares as if, what are you doing here? And this has happened to me. And it's not a situation where you're talking about it's all in your head. We're talking about where, even back in the days, or where you're talking about during the times of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where clearly a brother didn't want to stand next to another brother because he was Abyssinian. You didn't want to pray next to another person because he was poor. These are the type of things that now, based on geographics and communities, and this is the same thing. This is how they defeated segregation. Like, we're emulating an evil practice with this right now, so they don't have to not allow to make it forbidden for us to have mixed communities and mixed schools and things of this nature. We'll just move everyone over here to this community, and it'll only be whites at this school because only whites live in this neighborhood. Only whites live in close proximity to this particular school. We do the same thing. Well, only this race or group of people live in close proximity to this masjid. Astaghfirullah. It's the same practice. It's the same practice. And my point is that in many instances, it weakens us. We don't know each other. We don't get to benefit from the different talents and different cultural backgrounds. Whether it's the great tasting food that this ethnicity may bring to the table, or maybe it's the art or the poetry, whatever the case may be. We're depriving ourselves of all these things because we don't congregate. We don't do what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded us to. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us that if he wanted to make us all one race, he could have, but he made us different. Why? So that we can get to know one another, and so we can benefit from our differences, not so we can despise one another because of our differences. And yeah, we can be honest with one another. We have different practices. We have different cultural backgrounds. But as my brother Khalid Mutaki said when he was a guest on the show, you have to have cultural competence. You have to have a cultural awareness. It's not about having a cultural bias. And it's not about putting anything before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his messenger, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. When you say La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, this is supposed to supersede everything else. Everything else. The way where you're from, the way we talk, the language barriers, all this book and the sunnah of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, this is supposed to unite us. We're supposed to be united. And not only that, even beyond the religion, even beyond the deen of Ibrahim alayhi salam, we're supposed to be united on one. If one thing should be able to unite good people, is this particular ayat, that we all stand out for justice and stand for what's right. One of the most common sayings you'll hear growing up, I know in the African community, is, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. If you don't stand for something, you will fall for anything. We won't ever make this world a better place for our children, for our grandchildren, for their grandchildren, so on and so on. We want to talk about generational wealth. It's like, what good is your generational wealth if we're only talking about material things and money? If that's the only wealth that we're talking about passing down, what good is it going to be in a land of anarchy, in a land where evildoers are ruling the nations? There are leaders. They're taking positions where they're making all the decisions. They have the most influence. We have to stand up and stand out against evil. Stand up and be firm against evil. With that, I'll close. I hope and pray that all of our viewers today will be motivated to not let race, creed, class, or anything else prevent you from standing out and standing up for what's right, no matter who it's against, and helping a person. Sometimes you help a person when you admonish them when they're about to do something wrong, especially if they're oppressing someone else. Bring that to their attention. Be courageous in doing so. With that, I'll close. Let's close out with Wal Asr. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Wal Asr. Innal insana lafi khusr. Illa alladhina amanu wa amilu salihati. Wa tawasaw bil haqq. Wa tawasaw bis sabr. Thank you again, brothers and sisters, for joining us for Islamic Learning with Masjid As-Sabur. Join us every Friday here for Juma. Bring your wives, bring your children. The first adhan, call for prayer, is at 1 o'clock. The actual khutbah starts at 1:30. Thank you again for joining us. I hope you learned something today with Learning with Masjid As-Sabur, Islamic Learning with Masjid As-Sabur. I'm your host, Brother Hassan Ibn Julius Thibodeau. Assalamu alaikum.